You're different from all of them, the millionaire told me, and I'm just a window-cleaning mother. But what he didn't see was the woman behind the squeegee, stained gloves, aching back, and a heart bruised by years of invisible labor. They never see me, not really. Maybe you're working for someone who never says thank you, or cleaning up while everyone else sleeps. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? I promise today's story will touch your heart. I'm Gloria Martinez, 53 years old, and every morning before dawn breaks over the Chicago skyline, I pull on my cracked leather boots and thread my graying hair under a faded baseball cap. The smell of Windex and ammonia clings to my clothes like a second skin. My breath creates small clouds in the bitter cold as I step onto my squeegee ladder outside those gleaming South Loop skyscrapers, buildings that stretch toward heaven but keep their feet planted firmly in the world of money and power, glass and steel towers. That's my universe. I scrub away fingerprints and city grime from windows that reflect faces I don't belong to. Executives in $1,000 suits, lawyers clutching briefcases worth more than my monthly rent, women in designer heels who click past me like I'm part of the building's fixtures. Through those spotless windows, I see conference rooms where millions of dollars change hands with a handshake, where cryptocurrency portfolios flash across computer screens, where business deals create fortunes, while I earn $18 an hour making their world transparent. This particular morning, my phone buzzed against my hip. A text from Mrs. Chen, my 8-year-old Clara's babysitter. "Sorry, Gloria, emergency with my mother. Can't watch Clara today." My heart sank like a stone thrown in Lake Michigan. No childcare meant no work tomorrow. No work meant no paycheck. And tomorrow was the night Mr. James Reynolds had invited me to that charity fundraiser at the Palmer House. A chance to escape the grime and invisibility for one evening, maybe feel like I mattered to someone. But reality always bites harder than Chicago's winter wind. I stayed suspended on my ladder, caught between shimmering glass and gray November sky, invisible to the wealthy world I cleaned, forgotten by my own dreams. Clara would spend another day at the neighbor's apartment, watching cartoons while I scrubbed away at other people's view of the world. Mr. Reynolds, James. He owned the penthouse in the Millennium Tower where I'd worked for 3 years. 58 years old, silver hair always perfectly styled, hands that had never known calluses or chemical burns. His investment portfolio included tech stocks worth millions, a diversified collection that spanned from traditional blue chips to modern cryptocurrency holdings that fluctuated wildly, but always seemed to land in his favor. He'd made his fortune in real estate development, turning crumbling Chicago neighborhoods into luxury condos that people like me could never afford. But unlike the others, he looked at me when he spoke. Not through me, not past me, at me. "Gloria," he'd say, "you have something they don't. Authenticity. Heart." His voice carried the authority of someone who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals, but when he spoke to me, it softened into something I'd never heard from employers before. Respect. 3 weeks ago, while I cleaned the floor-to-ceiling windows in his living room, he watched me work from his leather chair. The afternoon sun streamed through the glass, making everything golden except for my reflection, a small, tired woman in a faded uniform. "You know what I love about you, Gloria?" he said suddenly. "You're different from all of them. My business partners, my ex-wife, even my own children, they all want something from me. Money, connections, a piece of my assets. But you just want to do good work." I paused mid-wipe, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I just do my job, Mr. Reynolds." "Call me James," he said. "And it's more than a job. You care. When you clean these windows, you don't just make them clear, you make this place feel like home. Do you know how rare that is?" I didn't know how to answer. In my world, kindness from employers usually came with a catch, a hidden cost I'd pay later. But his words felt different. They felt genuine. That's when he invited me to the charity gala. It's for children's literacy, he explained. They'll serve dinner, there'll be dancing. I'd like you to come as my guest. He paused, studying my face. When's the last time someone took care of you, Gloria? The question hit me like a physical blow. When was the last time? I couldn't remember. Maybe never. But life has a way of crushing hope before it can fully bloom. Between that invitation and the gala, my world began to crumble in small, devastating ways that rich people never have to endure. My landlord in Pilsen raised my rent by $200. Market rates, he shrugged, as if my 15 years of never missing a payment meant nothing. My car broke down, the transmission dying with a final expensive shudder. The repair estimate was more than I made in a month. Clara needed new shoes, her old ones held together with duct tape and prayers. The babysitter who watched her while I worked evenings found a better-paying job. Each crisis felt like another weight added to a scale that was already tilting dangerously. I started taking extra shifts, cleaning office buildings until midnight, then starting my regular route before dawn. My hands cracked and bled from the constant exposure to chemicals. My back ached so deeply that some mornings I had to roll out of bed because sitting up hurt too much. Clara noticed. "Mama, why are your hands always red?" she asked one evening, her small fingers tracing the angry welts on my palms. "It's nothing, mija," I lied, pulling my hands away, "just from working." But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. It was the price of being invisible, of cleaning up after people who made more in a day than I made in a year. It was the cost of raising a daughter alone while working jobs that left me too exhausted to help with homework, too broke to buy the books she needed for school. The night before the charity gala, I stood in my tiny bedroom, staring at the one dress I owned that wasn't a uniform, black polyester, bought at Goodwill 3 years ago for my cousin's wedding. It had a small stain on the sleeve that I'd never been able to remove completely. My shoes were scuffed, my purse was falling apart, and I hadn't had my hair cut in 6 months. How could I stand next to James Reynolds, a man whose net worth was measured in millions, whose investment portfolio included assets I couldn't even pronounce? How could I pretend to belong in a world where the charity auction would raise more money in one evening than I'd see in a lifetime? I called him that night, my hands shaking as I dialed his private number. "James, it's Gloria. I can't come tomorrow night. I'm sorry." There was a long pause. What's wrong? Everything I wanted to say. My whole life is wrong. Instead, I said, "It's not appropriate. I'm your cleaning lady. You should take someone from your world." "My world," he repeated quietly. "Do you know what my world is like, Gloria? It's full of people who smile to my face and calculate my net worth behind my back. It's business dinners where every conversation is really about money. Who has it? Who wants it? Who's willing to do anything to get it? It's ex-wives who fought over my assets in divorce court like vultures picking at carrion." His voice grew softer. "You think I care about appropriate? I care about real. You're the most real person I've met in years." But real didn't pay for Clara's shoes. Real didn't fix my car or calm my landlord. Real was just another luxury I couldn't afford. I didn't go to the gala. Instead, I worked a double shift cleaning an office building downtown, my dress hanging unused in my closet like a dream I'd been foolish to entertain. The next Monday, when I arrived at the Millennium Tower for my regular shift, everything felt different. James was there, but he didn't meet my eyes. He spoke to me formally, professionally. "Please make sure the windows are streak-free and the housekeeping service missed some spots in the kitchen." The warmth was gone. The idea that I might be different, special, worthy of his attention, that died as quickly as it had been born. But worse than losing his attention was what came next. The slow, grinding machinery of a world that crushes people like me began to turn. It started with small things. My paycheck was late. Payroll error, they said. Then it was scrutinized in ways it had never been before. "This window has water spots. The floor doesn't look properly mopped." Are you using the correct cleaning solution? I'd been doing the same job the same way for 3 years. Nothing had changed except James's opinion of me, and somehow that shift rippled through the entire building management like a stone thrown in still water. The building supervisor, a thin man named Peterson who'd barely acknowledged my existence before, suddenly became my constant critic. "Mrs. Martinez, I need to speak with you about your performance." We stood in the sterile hallway of the building's service level, fluorescent lights humming overhead like trapped insects. The concrete walls were painted institutional yellow, the color of forgotten places where forgotten people worked. "There have been complaints," Peterson said, not meeting my eyes. "What kind of complaints?" "General complaints. Quality issues, professionalism concerns." "Professionalism concerns." The phrase made my stomach clench. "I've worked here for 3 years without any problems." "Well, there are problems now." He handed me a piece of paper. "This is a formal warning. Any further issues and we'll have to terminate your employment." I read the warning with hands that trembled despite my efforts to stay calm. The complaints were vague, impossible to defend against. Inadequate attention to detail. Unprofessional behavior with residents. Failure to maintain building standards. That last one cut deepest. Failure to maintain standards, as if my worth could be measured by the shine on a window or the absence of dust on a baseboard. I knew what this was really about. James Reynolds had decided I'd overstepped, presumed too much, forgotten my place, and now his displeasure was filtering down through the building's hierarchy like poison in a well. But I needed this job. Clara needed me to keep this job. So I swallowed my pride like a bitter pill and nodded. "I understand. It won't happen again." "See that it doesn't," Peterson said, already turning away. "Oh, and Mrs. Martinez, your position is being changed to part-time. Budget cuts." Part-time. Half the hours, half the pay, but the same bills to cover. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, to fight back. Instead, I whispered, "When does that start?" "Next week." I walked home through the Chicago streets that November evening feeling like I was disappearing, becoming translucent as the city lights shined through me. The familiar weight of my cleaning supplies felt heavier with each step. My reflection in store windows looked ghost-like, insubstantial. Clara was waiting for me at the neighbor's apartment, her homework spread across Mrs. Rodriguez's kitchen table. She looked up when I came in, her 8-year-old eyes already learning to read the exhaustion in my face. "Mama, are you okay?" I smiled for her, the way I always did, the way mothers learn to do when the world is crushing them, but their children need to believe in safety. "I'm fine, mija, just tired." But that night, after Clara fell asleep in our narrow bed, I sat at my kitchen table with my calculator and a stack of bills. Rent, utilities, groceries, car payment, childcare, school supplies. The numbers stared back at me like accusers, each one representing another way I was failing. Part-time at the Millennium Tower wouldn't be enough. I'd have to find another job, maybe 2 more jobs. I'd have to work nights and weekends, miss more of Clara's childhood, stretch myself thinner than tissue paper until I finally tore apart completely. I thought about James Reynolds in his penthouse, probably reviewing his stock portfolio or checking his cryptocurrency investments, his world unchanged by my absence from it. Did he know what his cold shoulder had cost me? Did he care? The next morning, I went to work determined to be invisible again, to remember my place and stay in it. I arrived early before dawn and began cleaning with mechanical precision. Every window spotless, every surface gleaming, every corner dust-free. But invisibility, I learned, was a luxury they wouldn't allow me anymore. James's sister-in-law, Monica Reynolds, lived in the building's second penthouse. I'd cleaned for her occasionally over the years. She was demanding, but not cruel, the kind of wealthy woman who noticed dirt, but not the person cleaning it up. That Tuesday morning, she was waiting for me when I arrived at her floor. "Gloria, isn't it?" she said. her voice carrying the particular tone rich people use when they're about to deliver bad news while pretending to be kind. "Yes, ma'am. I wanted to speak with you about something rather delicate." Monica was in her early 50s, perfectly maintained in the way that money makes possible. Designer clothes, expensive haircut, skin that had never seen a day of manual labor. "There's been some concern about your relationship with my brother-in-law." My stomach dropped. "I don't understand." "Oh, I think you do." Her smile was sharp as broken glass. "James is a wealthy man, Gloria. A very wealthy man. His investment portfolio alone is worth more than most people see in a lifetime, and unfortunately, that makes him a target for opportunistic individuals." The word hung in the air between us like a slap. Opportunistic. "Mrs. Reynolds, I'm not accusing you of anything specific," she interrupted smoothly. "I'm simply pointing out that appearances matter. James has been through a difficult divorce. His ex-wife took half of his assets, including some very valuable cryptocurrency holdings. He's vulnerable right now, susceptible to people who might want to take advantage of his generous nature." Each word was carefully chosen, precisely delivered. She was calling me a gold digger without actually saying the words, painting me as a predator, stalking a wounded billionaire. "I understand you were invited to a social event," she continued. "That's inappropriate. It sends the wrong message. People might get ideas about your intentions." "My intentions are to do my job," I said quietly. "Of course they are." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "And I'm sure you're very good at your job. But let's keep things professional, shall we? I'd hate for there to be any misunderstandings that might affect your employment." The threat was clear. "Stay in your lane or lose your job." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. She patted my arm in a gesture that might have looked kind to an observer, but felt like a claim of ownership. "I knew you'd understand. You seem like a sensible woman." Sensible. Another word that really meant something else. Sensible women knew their place. Sensible women didn't dream above their station. Sensible women accepted scraps and called them blessings. The rest of that week passed in a blur of mechanical work and careful invisibility. I cleaned windows and mopped floors and emptied trash cans while Monica's words echoed in my head. Opportunistic, inappropriate, vulnerable. But the worst part wasn't the accusation. It was the seed of doubt it planted. Had James really seen something special in me? Or had I imagined it? Had his kindness been genuine? Or was Monica right? Was I just another cleaning lady who'd misread basic human decency as something more? Friday afternoon, I was working on the common area windows when I overheard a conversation between two residents waiting for the elevator. They didn't notice me. I was part of the building's furniture, as invisible as the security cameras or fire extinguishers. "Did you hear about James Reynolds and his cleaning lady?" one woman asked. "No. What happened?" Monica said she had to have a talk with her. Apparently, the woman was getting ideas above her station. Can you imagine? A 60-year-old millionaire and she lowered her voice, but not enough. Some Mexican cleaning woman who probably doesn't even have papers. I'm not Mexican. I'm Puerto Rican, born in Chicago. But to them, it didn't matter. Brown skin and a mop bucket made me whatever stereotype was most convenient. "That's awful," the second woman replied. "These people, they have no shame. They see dollar signs and think they can just... God, it's disgusting." Monica handled it well, though. Put her back where she belongs. Back where I belong. In service tunnels and utility closets, in the spaces between their real lives, visible only when something needs cleaning or fixing or removing. That night, I sat Clara down at our kitchen table. She was working on a math worksheet, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration, the way it had since she was tiny. "Mia," I said softly, "how would you feel if we moved somewhere else?" She looked up, pencil suspended over her paper. "Like to a different apartment?" "Maybe a different city. Start fresh somewhere new. Clara was quiet for a long moment, considering. At 8, she was already learning that life was uncertain, that sometimes you had to uproot everything and begin again. Would we have to leave Mrs. Rodriguez? She asked finally. Mrs. Rodriguez, our neighbor who watched Clara when I worked late, who made extra rice and beans and always insisted we join her family for dinner, who treated us like relatives, not charity cases. Yes, we'd have to leave her, but we'd make new friends. What about my school? You'd go to a new school. Clara nodded slowly, processing the magnitude of change I was suggesting. Are you sad, Mama? The question hit me unexpectedly. Children see everything, even when we think we're hiding it well. Sometimes I'm sad, I admitted, but not when I'm with you. Then we don't have to move. I don't mind if you're sad sometimes. Everyone gets sad. The simple wisdom of an 8-year-old. Everyone gets sad. As if sadness was just weather, something that passed through but didn't define the landscape. But some sadness, I was learning, carved permanent canyons through your heart. The following Monday brought news that felt like the final nail in a coffin I didn't even know was being built around me. Peterson called me into his office, a cramped space in the building's basement that smelled of industrial cleaning supplies and broken dreams. Mrs. Martinez, we need to discuss your future with the company. Future. That was optimistic. There have been additional complaints about your work quality, he continued, shuffling papers that I suspected were blank. And some residents have expressed concerns about your professionalism. Professionalism again. The catch-all criticism that meant whatever they needed it to mean. I'd like to know specifically what I've done wrong so I can fix it, I said. Peterson looked uncomfortable. It's not any one thing. It's an overall pattern of attitude issues. What kind of attitude issues? Look, Mrs. Martinez, I'm trying to help you here. The company is prepared to offer you a severance package, 2 weeks' pay and a positive reference for future employment. All you have to do is submit your resignation. A severance package. They wanted me gone, but they wanted me to leave voluntarily so they wouldn't risk unemployment compensation claims or wrongful termination lawsuits. And if I don't resign? Peterson's expression hardened. Then we'll have to continue documenting performance issues until we have grounds for termination. That could take weeks or months, and I can't guarantee what kind of reference you'd get after that process. The message was clear. Leave now with something, or stay and lose everything. I thought about Clara's math homework, about the rent that was due in 2 weeks, about the car payment and grocery bills and all the small necessities that added up to survival. I need time to think about it. Of course, take the weekend. Let me know Monday. That weekend stretched forever. I walked through Lincoln Park with Clara, watching families play on playground equipment I couldn't afford to replace when it broke. I cooked simple meals and helped with homework and pretended my world wasn't collapsing. Sunday evening, Clara fell asleep early, exhausted from a day at the lakefront. I sat alone in our small living room, surrounded by secondhand furniture and bargain store decorations, trying to imagine our future. Without the Millennium Tower job, I'd have to find work elsewhere. But Monica Reynolds had made it clear that my reputation in that building, and probably others like it, was damaged. Word traveled in the small world of Chicago's luxury high-rises. One building manager's phone call to another would be enough to close doors before I even knew they existed. I could look for work outside the cleaning industry, but what else was I qualified for? My English was good, but not perfect. I had no college degree, no technical training, no connections to business world jobs that paid living wages. The truth settled on me like snow, cold and unavoidable. I was trapped. Then my phone rang. The number was familiar. James Reynolds' private line. I stared at it, my heart hammering. After 2 weeks of silence, why was he calling now? I answered on the 4th ring. Hello? Gloria, it's James. I hope I'm not calling too late. His voice sounded different. Tired, maybe. Uncertain in a way I'd never heard from him before. "It's fine," I said carefully. "I wanted to apologize for how things have been lately. I know the building management has been difficult." Difficult. Such a mild word for what felt like character assassination. "I didn't realize Peterson was giving you trouble until I spoke with some other residents," he continued. "Monica mentioned she'd talked to you as well." Ah, so he knew about his sister-in-law's threats. "She was protecting your reputation," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "My reputation." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "Do you know what my reputation is worth, Gloria? In the business world, absolutely everything. In the real world, the world where people matter more than portfolios, absolutely nothing." I didn't know how to respond to that. "I made a mistake," he said finally. "I let other people's opinions matter more than my own judgment. I let them convince me that inviting you to that charity event was inappropriate, that spending time with you sent the wrong message." Maybe it did send the wrong message. What message was that? That you saw me as more than just your cleaning lady. There was a long pause. And what if I did? The question hung between us, loaded with possibilities that terrified me. "Mr. Reynolds, James, we live in different worlds. Your net worth is probably more than my entire neighborhood has ever seen combined. You invest in cryptocurrency that I don't even understand, make business decisions that affect thousands of jobs. I clean windows for $18 an hour and worry about whether I can afford new shoes for my daughter. Money isn't everything, Gloria." "It's easy to say that when you have it." Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "You're right. I've been wealthy for so long that I forgot what it's like to worry about basic survival. But I remember what it felt like to be dismissed, to be judged by people who thought they knew me without ever seeing who I really was." "When was that?" "When I was building my first business. I was 25, working 16-hour days, wearing the same suit to every meeting because it was the only decent one I owned. The established real estate developers saw me as an upstart, a nobody who didn't deserve their attention. They'd talk over me in meetings, exclude me from deals, make it clear I didn't belong in their world." I tried to imagine James Reynolds as a struggling young businessman, but it was difficult. Wealth had a way of erasing people's histories, making their current status seem inevitable and permanent. "What changed?" I asked. "I made money, enough money that they had to take me seriously whether they wanted to or not. I told myself that success was the best revenge, that proving them wrong mattered more than proving myself right. Did it work? For a while. But eventually, you realize that respect built on fear isn't really respect at all. And money that buys you into rooms where you're not wanted doesn't really buy you belonging." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, I felt something I hadn't expected, sympathy for a millionaire. "Gloria," he said finally, "I'd like to see you again, not as your employer, not as someone who signs your paycheck, just as James and Gloria, two people who enjoyed each other's company." "I don't think that's possible." "Why not?" "Because people like your sister-in-law will always see me as an opportunistic gold digger. Because people like Peterson will always find ways to punish me for forgetting my place. Because no matter how you see me, the world will always see a cleaning lady who got ideas above her station. Then maybe we need to find a different world." The suggestion was so simple and so impossible that it took my breath away. "I have a daughter," I said finally. "I know, Clara, right? 8 years old?" The fact that he remembered her name, had bothered to learn it, meant more to me than I wanted to admit. "She's my whole life, James. Whatever decisions I make have to be good for her, not just for me." "I understand. But Gloria, doesn't she deserve to see her mother treated with respect? Doesn't she deserve to grow up knowing that her worth isn't determined by other people's prejudices?" The question hit me like a physical blow because it was exactly what I'd been thinking, but hadn't dared to voice. "Think about it," he said softly. "That's all I'm asking. Think about what you want, not what other people think you should want." After he hung up, I sat in my dark living room for hours, his words echoing in my head. What did I want? It had been so long since anyone had asked me that question, so long since I'd allowed myself to consider it seriously. I wanted Clara to have opportunities I'd never had. I wanted to stop apologizing for taking up space in the world. I wanted to be seen as a whole person, not just a function. I wanted to matter to someone, to have my opinions valued, my feelings considered. But wanting and having were different things entirely. Monday morning came with Chicago's typical November gray, the kind of day that makes everything look washed out and lifeless. I dressed carefully, choosing my cleanest uniform, making sure my hair was neat under my cap. If this was going to be my last day at the Millennium Tower, I wanted to leave with dignity intact. Peterson was waiting for me in his office, the resignation letter already prepared for my signature. "Have you made your decision, Mrs. Martinez?" I looked at the paper, at my name typed in official font below words that would end my employment. Above it was the severance offer, 2 weeks' pay that would buy Clara and me a little time to figure out what came next. "Before I sign this," I said slowly, "I have a question." Peterson looked impatient. "What kind of question?" "The complaints about my work. Were they real, or were you just looking for reasons to get rid of me?" His face reddened slightly. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. In 3 years of working here, I never had a single complaint. Then suddenly, in the span of 2 weeks, I'm a problem employee. What changed?" Peterson shifted in his seat, his discomfort obvious. "Your performance changed." "No, it didn't. What changed was that someone decided I'd overstepped some invisible line, and you were ordered to find a way to make me disappear quietly." "Mrs. Martinez, I think you're being paranoid." "Am I?" I stood up, leaving the unsigned resignation letter on his desk. "You know what? I've changed my mind. I'm not resigning." Peterson's eyes widened. "That's not a wise decision. The performance review process can be very unpleasant. More unpleasant than being forced out of a job I've done well for 3 years because someone doesn't like the idea of their wealthy tenant treating me like a human being. I doubt it." I walked toward the door, then turned back. "You want me gone? You'll have to fire me legitimately. Document every single thing I do wrong, follow proper procedures, build a real case. And we'll see how that holds up if I decide to file a complaint with the labor board." I left his office before he could respond, my heart pounding but my steps steady. It felt like jumping off a cliff, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was choosing my own direction for the fall. The rest of that day passed in a strange bubble of hyper-awareness. Every task felt significant, every interaction loaded with potential consequence. I cleaned windows with extra care, knowing that Peterson would be looking for any excuse to criticize. I kept my eyes down and my mouth shut, playing the part of the invisible worker while internally preparing for war. But the war, when it came, started from an unexpected direction. That afternoon, while I was cleaning the common area on James's floor, I overheard a phone conversation that changed everything. James was in the hallway, his cell phone pressed to his ear, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making million-dollar decisions. "No, I'm not interested in your concerns about my personal life," he was saying. "My investment decisions are based on market research, not family gossip." "What do you mean, inappropriate relationship?" "Monica, I don't give a damn what the building board thinks." I tried to move away to give him privacy, but he saw me and actually gestured for me to stay. "Let me be very clear," he continued, his voice growing colder. "Gloria Martinez is one of the most professional, hard-working people in this building. If you or anyone else has a problem with how I choose to spend my time or who I choose to spend it with, that's your issue, not mine. No, I will not be discussing this further." He hung up and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," he said. "It's okay. I understand the position this puts you in." "Do you? Because I'm not sure you do." He moved closer, lowering his voice. "Gloria, I've spent my entire adult life building wealth and status. My net worth is in the hundreds of millions. I own properties in 3 states, hold diversified investment portfolios that include everything from traditional stocks to cutting-edge cryptocurrency. I employ over 200 people across my various businesses." I nodded, not sure where this was leading. "And do you know what all of that has gotten me? An ex-wife who saw me as a commodity to be divided up in divorce court, children who call me twice a year, once on my birthday, once on Christmas, and spend most of those conversations asking for money, business associates who smile at my face and calculate my net worth behind my back." His voice grew softer. "Then I meet you, a woman who cleans my windows and sees smudges I missed, who asks about my day and actually listens to the answer, who brings me coffee when I'm working late and doesn't expect anything in return except basic human decency." "James, let me finish, please." He ran a hand through his silver hair. "For the first time in years, I found myself looking forward to Monday mornings because you'd be here. Not because you wanted something from me, but because you saw me as a person worth talking to. The words hung between us, honest and vulnerable in a way that made my chest tight. But this can't work," I said quietly. "You see what's happening already. Your family is upset. The building management is pushing me out. People are talking, and I can't afford to lose my job over whatever this is." "What if you didn't have to worry about losing your job?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if I offered you something different? Not just another cleaning position, but real work. Work that uses your intelligence, your judgment, your people skills." I stared at him, trying to process what he was suggesting. "I need someone to help manage my personal affairs," he continued. "Schedule appointments, coordinate with contractors on my properties, handle correspondence, manage my household staff. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well and it comes with respect." "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity. $45,000 a year to start, health insurance, 2 weeks paid vacation. And Gloria, if we decide to explore whatever is happening between us, it would be between 2 adults who work together as equals, not between an employer and his cleaning lady." $45,000, more than double what I made now. Enough to move Clara and me out of Pilsen, maybe into a place with a yard where she could play safely. Enough to buy her new clothes without calculating the cost of every item. Enough to breathe. "Why?" I asked. "Because you deserve it. Because Clara deserves to have a mother who's valued for her mind, not just her ability to make windows sparkle. And because I'm tired of letting other people's limited vision dictate how I live my life." That night, I called in sick to my evening cleaning job and took Clara out for pizza at her favorite place in Little Village. As she attacked a slice bigger than her face, I tried to imagine explaining this opportunity to her. "Misha," I said carefully, "how would you feel if Mama got a new job?" She looked up, cheese stretching between her mouth and the pizza slice. "Would it pay more money?" "Yes, it would pay more money." "Would you be happier?" The question caught me off guard. "What makes you think I'm not happy now?" Clara shrugged, suddenly looking older than her 8 years. "You cry sometimes when you think I'm sleeping, and your hands always hurt, and you get really quiet when the bills come. Children see everything. They absorb the stress their parents try to hide, carry the weight of adult worries in their small shoulders. If this new job made me happier, would that be good?" I asked. "Yes," she said immediately. "But Mama, will the new job let you have dinner with me more?" The question broke my heart because it was so simple and so complicated at the same time. Quality time with my daughter shouldn't be a luxury, but in my world, it had become exactly that. "Yes, Mija, I think it would." "Then you should take it." Out of the mouths of babes, But that night, lying in our narrow bed while Clara slept beside me, doubts crept in, like Chicago's winter wind through old windows. Was I making the same mistake countless women had made before me, confusing a boss's professional interest with personal attraction? Was I setting myself up for a fall that would be even more devastating than my current situation? And what about the whispers that would follow me? The assumptions people would make about how I'd really earned this opportunity? I thought about Monica Reynolds' words, opportunistic individuals. Would taking this job prove her right? Tuesday morning, I arrived at the Millennium Tower 15 minutes early, my mind made up. I found Peterson in his office, the unsigned resignation letter still sitting on his desk where I'd left it. "Mrs. Martinez," he said coldly, "I trust you've reconsidered your position." Actually, I have. I sat down across from him, my back straight. "I'm giving you my 2 weeks' notice, but not because you want me to, because I've found better employment elsewhere." Peterson's expression shifted from smugness to confusion. "I see. May I ask where you'll be working?" "For Mr. Reynolds, as his personal assistant." The color drained from Peterson's face. In the hierarchy of building management, antagonizing a penthouse owner was career suicide. "I see," he said slowly. "Well, I hope you'll be very professional in your new position." "I intend to be," I replied, "just as professional as I've been for the past 3 years as your cleaning staff." I stood to leave, then turned back. "Oh, and Mr. Peterson, you might want to review the building's anti-retaliation policies in case any future employees find themselves in similar situations." Walking out of that basement office felt like emerging from underground into sunlight. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of the future. My first day as James Reynolds' personal assistant was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Instead of arriving before dawn with a bucket of cleaning supplies, I came at 9 in the morning carrying a new laptop and wearing the nicest outfit I owned, a navy blue dress that Clara had helped me pick out from the sale rack at Macy's. James's home office was on the top floor of his penthouse, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan. The same windows I'd cleaned hundreds of times, but now I was sitting behind a mahogany desk instead of hanging outside on a ladder. "Your first task," James said, settling into the chair across from my desk, "is to help me coordinate the renovation of a property I just bought in Lincoln Park. The contractors need scheduling, the permits need follow-up, and the interior designer has approximately 1 million questions detailed." He handed me a thick folder filled with architectural plans, contractor estimates, and correspondence. The numbers made my head spin, a $2 million renovation budget for a house that had cost $5 million to purchase. "This is more money than I've ever seen," I said honestly. "It's just numbers on paper until the work gets done," James replied. "What matters is making sure everyone communicates effectively and deadlines are met. You're good with people, Gloria. You'll figure out the rest." Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into learning everything I could about James's business interests. His real estate portfolio included commercial properties across the Midwest, residential developments in growing suburbs, and luxury condos in downtown Chicago. His investment accounts held diversified assets ranging from blue-chip stocks to emerging market funds to a substantial cryptocurrency portfolio that fluctuated wildly but had grown exponentially over the past 5 years. The wealth was almost incomprehensible to someone who'd spent years counting pennies. But what struck me most was how hard James worked to manage it all. He was up by 5:30 every morning, reading financial reports and market analyses. He spent hours on conference calls with investment advisors, property managers, and business partners. The money didn't just maintain itself, it required constant attention and strategic decision-making. "I never realized how complicated being rich was," I told him one afternoon after a particularly challenging call with a contractor who was running behind schedule and over budget. James laughed. "Money doesn't solve problems. It just changes which problems you have. Instead of worrying about paying rent, you worry about property taxes and insurance, and whether your tenants are maintaining your investment. Instead of choosing between buying groceries or fixing your car, you're deciding whether to reinvest dividends or diversify into international markets. Those sound like better problems to have. They are, he agreed. But they're still problems, and money can't buy the things that actually matter: trust, loyalty, genuine affection. If anything, it makes those things harder to find because you never know if people like you for yourself or for your net worth. The conversation stayed with me because it explained something I'd been wondering about. Despite his wealth and success, James often seemed lonely. His phone rarely rang with social calls. He worked most weekends, not because he had to, but because he had little else to do. His children lived in other cities and called only when they needed something. His divorce had been bitter, leaving him cynical about romantic relationships. "When's the last time you took a vacation?" I asked him one evening as we finished reviewing quarterly investment reports. "Last year, a week in Aspen with some business associates. We spent the whole time talking about market conditions and potential acquisitions." "That's not a vacation. That's a working trip in a nice location." He looked up from his computer. "When's the last time you took a vacation?" The question caught me off guard because the answer was embarrassing. I've never taken a real vacation, maybe day trips to the lake with Clara, but never anything that required a hotel or plane tickets. Then we're both overdue. The idea of a vacation, going somewhere just for pleasure, staying in a hotel, eating meals I didn't have to cook or clean up after, seemed as foreign as space travel. But as the weeks passed and I settled into my new role, impossible things started feeling merely improbable. My paycheck was deposited electronically every 2 weeks, and the first time I checked my bank balance and saw more than a few $100s, I stared at the screen for 10 minutes. The second month, I was able to move Clara and me into a 2-bedroom apartment in Logan Square, complete with a small balcony where I could grow herbs and tomatoes. "Mama, can I have my own room?" Clara asked when we toured the new place. "Yes, mija. Your own room with a window that gets morning sunshine." That night, she fell asleep clutching the lease agreement like it was a letter from Disneyland. But the biggest change wasn't financial. It was emotional. For the first time in my adult life, I woke up looking forward to work. James treated me as a partner in managing his affairs, asking for my opinions and trusting my judgment. When contractors tried to inflate estimates, I pushed back. When investment advisors called with opportunities that sounded too risky, I asked the questions James might not think to ask. "You have good instincts," he told me after I'd successfully negotiated a better deal with a property management company. "You see things other people miss." "I've had to," I replied. When you're invisible for long enough, you learn to pay attention to everything because no one's going to explain things to you twice. "You were never invisible to me." The way he said it made something flutter in my chest, a feeling I'd trained myself not to acknowledge. But it was getting harder to ignore the growing connection between us, the way conversations lingered longer than necessary, the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The tension finally broke on a snowy Thursday evening in January. We'd been working late, preparing documents for a property closing the next morning, when James's computer crashed and we lost an hour's worth of work. "Damn," he muttered, leaning back in his chair. "I'm sorry, Gloria. I know you want to get home to Clara." "It's okay. She's sleeping over at her friend's house tonight. We have time to redo it." Still, this is the kind of thing that makes me wish I knew more about technology, or had a son who could come fix these things instead of calling twice a year to ask for money. The bitterness in his voice was unusual. James rarely complained about his family situation, but the stress of the day seemed to have worn down his usual diplomatic reserve. "Do you miss them?" I asked quietly. "Miss who?" "Your kids." He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the snow falling past his windows. "I miss the idea of them, the relationship I thought we'd have when they were small. But the truth is, we've never been close. I was so focused on building wealth to provide for them that I forgot to actually be present for them. It's not too late to change that, isn't it? My daughter is 31 and living in California. She has a doctorate in psychology and a successful private practice. My son is 28 and working for a tech company in Austin. Both of them are accomplished, independent adults who've made it clear they don't need a father, just periodic checks from a wealthy relative. The pain in his voice was so raw that I wanted to reach out and touch his hand, offer some comfort. Instead, I said, "Maybe they're not calling because they don't think you want to hear from them." "What do you mean?" "Maybe your relationship has become transactional because that's the only way you taught them to connect with you. Money was how you showed love, so money became how they ask for love." James looked at me with surprise. "When did you become a family therapist?" "When I became a mother. You learn to pay attention to what children really need versus what they say they need. Clara asks me for toys, but what she really wants is time and attention. Maybe your kids ask for money, but what they really want is to know that their father thinks about them for reasons that have nothing to do with finances. So what do you suggest? Call them. Not to ask how they are or whether they need anything, but to tell them something about your life. Share a memory, ask their advice about something non-financial. Let them know you as a person instead of as a bank account. That night, James called his daughter in California. I could hear his side of the conversation from my desk, and it was awkward at first, stilted small talk about weather and work. But gradually his voice warmed as he told her about a book he'd been reading, asked about her garden, shared a memory from her childhood. The call lasted 2 hours. When he hung up, his eyes were bright with tears. "She's thinking about visiting this spring," he said quietly. "She wants to see Chicago again, maybe bring her boyfriend to meet me." "That's wonderful." She said something interesting. She said she'd always thought I was too busy to want to talk to her about anything that wasn't important. She didn't realize I was waiting for her to call because I thought she didn't want to be bothered by her old man. Miscommunication happens in families. The important thing is that you're fixing it now. James looked at me with an expression that made my heart race. "You know what, Gloria? You've made my life better in ways that have nothing to do with organizing my schedule or managing contractors." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've reminded me what it feels like to talk to someone who cares about my answers. Someone who listens not because it's their job, but because they actually give a damn about me as a person." The words hung between us, loaded with implication. We were alone in his penthouse, snow falling outside like a curtain that separated us from the rest of the world. The attraction that had been building for months suddenly felt undeniable. "James," I said softly, "we need to be careful." "I know. But Gloria, I'm 58 years old. I've been married and divorced, built and lost relationships, made and lost millions of dollars. I know what genuine connection feels like, and it's rare. What we have is rare." He stood up and moved around the desk until he was standing next to my chair. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable, and I don't want to jeopardize your job or put you in an impossible position. But I also don't want to pretend I don't care about you." I looked up at him. This man who'd gone from being my employer to my advocate to something I was afraid to name. "I care about you too, but I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of people saying I used you for your money, of Clara getting attached to you and then losing another father figure, of this being too good to be true and falling apart like everything else in my life." "Those are all valid fears," he said gently. "But Gloria, what if it doesn't fall apart? What if for once in your life, something good happens and gets to stay good?" The possibility seemed too dangerous to consider, but as I sat there looking at James, really looking at him, not as my employer or a wealthy client, but as a man who'd shown me kindness when I'd forgotten I deserved it, I realized I was tired of being afraid. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay, what?" "Okay, let's see what happens." He smiled then and leaned down to kiss me. It was gentle and tentative, a question rather than a statement. When I kissed him back, it felt like answering yes to a future I'd never dared to imagine. But even fairy tales have complications, and ours was about to get very complicated very quickly. The next morning, James's ex-wife called. I was in the kitchen making coffee when his phone rang. He answered in his office, and I could hear his voice through the closed door. First surprised, then wary, finally angry. "No, Patricia, I'm not interested in revisiting our property settlement. Because we've been divorced for 3 years and I've moved on with my life. That's none of your business." "What do you mean, inappropriate relationship?" My blood turned to ice. Somehow, news of James and me had reached his ex-wife, probably through Monica Reynolds or someone else in the building's gossip network. "I don't give a damn what your attorney thinks," James was saying, his voice rising. "Our divorce agreement doesn't include a morality clause." "What do you mean, modification of alimony?" The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, James's voice growing colder and more clipped with each exchange. When he finally hung up, I was waiting in his office doorway. "How bad is it?" I asked. "She wants to take me back to court. Claims that my current lifestyle represents a significant change in circumstances that should affect our financial agreement." "What does that mean?" "It means she thinks she can get more money by arguing that I'm financially supporting a girlfriend, which allegedly demonstrates that I have disposable income I didn't have when we divorced." The logic was twisted but clever. If James was spending money on me, which he wasn't, beyond my salary, his ex-wife could argue that he'd been hiding assets during their divorce proceedings, or that his financial situation had improved enough to justify higher alimony payments. But that's not true. You're not supporting me financially beyond my job, and this relationship is barely 12 hours old. "Logic doesn't matter in family court," James said grimly. "Perception matters. And if Patricia's attorney can paint you as a gold-digging cleaning lady who seduced a vulnerable millionaire, they'll have a sympathetic story for the judge." The words hit me like a physical blow. Gold-digging cleaning lady. The stereotype I'd feared most, weaponized by people who didn't know me or care about the truth. So what do? "We have a few options. I can fight her in court, which will be expensive and public and might drag on for years. I can negotiate an increased settlement to make her go away, which essentially means paying her to leave us alone. Or we can end this before it really begins. Go back to being employer and employee, give Patricia nothing to use against me, and hope she drops the legal challenge." The third option hung in the air like a death sentence. After years of being invisible, I'd finally found someone who saw me, valued me, cared about me. And now we had to choose between our relationship and his financial security. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked quietly. "Potentially millions. My alimony payments to Patricia are based on my net worth at the time of our divorce. If she can prove that my circumstances have changed significantly, which increased spending on a girlfriend would suggest, she could claim entitlement to additional compensation. Millions of dollars. Enough money to fund Clara's college education, secure my retirement, change everything about our future. And I was the obstacle preventing James from protecting that wealth. "We should go back to being employer and employee," I said, the words tasting like poison. "Gloria, no, listen. I won't be responsible for costing you millions of dollars. I won't be the reason you lose money to an ex-wife who's trying to manipulate the system. And I won't put Clara through the circus of a public court battle where her mother is painted as a predator. What if I said the money doesn't matter to me? Then I'd say you're not thinking clearly. That money matters to your children's inheritance. It matters to your business investments. It matters to every charity you support and every employee you pay. You can't throw away millions of dollars for a relationship that might not even work out." James looked at me with something close to anguish. "So that's it? We go backward?" "We go forward, but separately. You keep your fortune secure, and I build my career with the skills I'm learning here. Maybe someday when the legal issues are resolved and the dust has settled, we can revisit this, but not now. And if someday never comes? I didn't answer because I couldn't. The truth was too painful to voice, that someday probably wouldn't come, that this was likely our only chance, and we were letting other people's greed and prejudice destroy it. That afternoon, I moved my desk back to its original position, creating physical distance between James and me. We spoke formally, professionally, sticking to business topics. The easy warmth that had developed between us cooled into polite efficiency. It was agonizing. Worse than being ignored had been, now I knew what I was missing. Knew exactly what connection felt like in the moments before it was taken away. But just when I thought I understood how this story would end, life threw me a curveball that changed everything. 2 weeks later, Clara came home from school with news that initially seemed insignificant, but would prove to be the key to our entire future. "Mama," she said, dropping her backpack by the door of our Logan Square apartment, "we're studying genealogy and social studies. Everyone has to research their family history and make a presentation." "That sounds interesting, mija. What did you find out?" "Well, I know Papa's family came from Puerto Rico, but I don't know much about your family. Mrs. Rodriguez said your grandmother used to tell stories about Spain, but you never talk about that stuff." She was right. I'd never talked much about my family history because most of it was painful. Poverty, abandonment, secrets that seemed better left buried. But Clara was 8 and curious, and she deserved to know where she came from. That weekend, we visited my elderly Aunt Rosa in Humboldt Park. Tia Rosa was my mother's sister, a woman in her 70s who'd never married but had raised half the neighborhood kids through the decades. Her small apartment was filled with photographs, religious candles, and the smell of sangarto cooking on the stove. "Mija," she said, pulling Clara onto her lap, "you want to know about your bisabuela Esperanza?" Ay, that woman had stories. For the next 2 hours, Tia Rosa spun tales about my great-grandmother, a woman who'd fled Spain during the Civil War with nothing but determination and a small leather pouch she'd sewn into her dress. She was from a wealthy family in Andalusia, Tia Rosa explained. Her father owned olive groves and vineyards, land that had been in the family for generations. But when the war came, they lost everything, except for what she had hidden. "What did she hide?" Clara asked, wide-eyed. "Jewelry, gold, documents proving ownership of property that might someday be recovered. She sewed it all into her clothes and carried it to America, planning to use it to rebuild her life." "What happened to it?" Tia Rosa's expression grew sad. "She died when your abuela was just 15, before she could tell her where everything was hidden. Your grandmother spent years looking through old trunks and boxes, but never found anything. We always assumed the valuables were sold long ago, or lost, or never existed in the first place." "But you think they were real?" "I know they were real. Before she died, Esperanza gave me this." Tia Rosa disappeared into her bedroom and returned with a small wooden box. Inside, wrapped in faded tissue paper, was an ornate gold locket. She said it was just one piece of what she'd saved, that the rest was hidden somewhere safe until her family could reclaim it. But she died so suddenly, a heart attack at only 52, that she never told anyone where. Clara turned the locket over in her small hands, studying the intricate engravings. "It's beautiful." "It's yours now," Tia Rosa said, "part of your heritage." That night, after Clara went to bed clutching her great-great-grandmother's locket, I sat at my kitchen table thinking about stories and secrets and the weight of family history. On impulse, I pulled out my laptop and started researching Spanish Civil War refugees, property records, family histories. What I found made my heart race. During the Spanish Civil War, many wealthy families had indeed hidden assets before fleeing the country. In recent decades, the Spanish government had established programs to help descendants recover family property that had been seized or abandoned. With the right documentation, families could reclaim land, buildings, even financial accounts that had been held in trust for generations. The process was complicated and required extensive proof of lineage, but it was possible. And if my great-grandmother had been as wealthy as Tia Rosa claimed, there might be something significant to recover. I spent the next 3 days researching Spanish property records, genealogy websites, and legal procedures for asset recovery. What I discovered was astounding. The Herrera family, my great-grandmother's maiden name, had owned substantial property in Córdoba province. According to records I found through the Spanish National Archives, the land had been seized by the Republican government in 1936, but never officially redistributed. After Franco's death and Spain's return to democracy, the property had been held in legal limbo, waiting for legitimate heirs to make claims. With the help of a Spanish attorney I contacted online, I learned that the Herrera estate included not just the original olive groves and vineyards, but a substantial farmhouse and several smaller buildings. Current estimates valued the property at over 2 million euros. 2 million euros. At current exchange rates, nearly 2.5 million American dollars. I stared at the computer screen, reading the same information over and over, afraid to believe it. Could it be possible that I, a woman who'd cleaned windows for survival wages, was the heir to a fortune that had been waiting in Spain for 80 years? The attorney, a woman named Isabel Moreno who specialized in Civil War recovery cases, explained the process over a video call that kept me awake until 3 a.m. "You'll need to provide extensive documentation," she said from her office in Madrid. "Birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates going back 4 generations, church records, immigration documents, any family papers that establish the connection between you and Esperanza Herrera." I don't have most of those things. Many people don't initially, but these documents often exist in unexpected places: churches, immigration archives, even old family Bibles. The key is persistence, and you have one significant advantage. What's that? The locket you described. If it's authentic, if the engravings match family records we have on file, it could serve as important corroborating evidence of your connection to the Herrera family. Over the next month, I threw myself into genealogical research with the same intensity I'd once brought to cleaning windows. I spent weekends at the Chicago History Museum, searching through immigration records. I visited churches in Humboldt Park and Pilsen, looking for baptismal certificates and marriage records. I called distant relatives I'd never spoken to, asking about family stories and old documents. Slowly, painstakingly, I assembled the paper trail of my ancestry. Birth certificates from Puerto Rico led to immigration records from Spain. Church records confirmed marriages and deaths. Family stories began to align with official documents. And through it all, I kept working for James, maintaining professional distance while my secret research consumed every free moment. The irony wasn't lost on me. While his ex-wife schemed to take his millions, I was potentially sitting on millions of my own. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Father Miguel at Our Lady of Sorrows Church had mentioned that many Spanish families had left documents with the church for safekeeping when they emigrated. On a whim, I asked if he'd check their archive for any Herrera family records. 3 days later, he called me with news that made my hands shake. "Gloria, you need to come down here. I found something you're going to want to see." In the church basement, in a filing cabinet that hadn't been opened in decades, Father Miguel had discovered a manila envelope marked Herrera Family Important Documents, 1940. Inside were my great-grandmother's original Spanish birth certificate, her parents' marriage certificate, and most importantly, a handwritten letter from Esperanza to her daughter, my grandmother, explaining everything she'd hidden and how to recover it. "Mi querida hija," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means I am gone and you are searching for the truth about our family. I pray that someday, when Spain is free again, you or your children can reclaim what belongs to us. The letter detailed not just the Spanish property, but also a bank account in Switzerland where Esperanza had deposited gold and jewelry before leaving Europe. Account numbers, bank locations, specific instructions for accessing funds that had been earning interest for nearly 80 years. With trembling hands, I photographed every document and immediately sent them to Isabel Moreno in Spain. Her response came within hours. "These documents are exactly what we need. I'm confident we can proceed with your claim. Based on preliminary research, the combined value of the Spanish property and Swiss account could exceed 4 million euros. 4 million euros. More than James's ex-wife was trying to extract from him. More than enough to secure Clara's future, pay for her education, ensure that neither of us would ever be financially vulnerable again. But more than the money, though the money was life-changing, was the vindication. I wasn't a gold-digging cleaning lady trying to trap a wealthy man. I was the rightful heir to a fortune that had been waiting for me to claim it. The next morning, I walked into James's office with documents that would change both our lives. "I need to tell you something," I said, closing the door behind me. He looked up from his computer, his expression carefully neutral. We'd been maintaining professional distance for weeks, our personal connection buried beneath layers of legal caution. "What is it?" "I'm about to become a very wealthy woman." I spread the Spanish documents across his desk. Birth certificates, property records, bank statements, Isabel Moreno's legal assessment. As James read through everything, his expression shifted from confusion to amazement to something close to joy. "Gloria," he said finally, "this is incredible. Do you understand what this means?" "It means I can afford to hire lawyers to fight Patricia's claims against you. It means I can become your business partner instead of your employee. It means nobody can ever again suggest that I'm with you for your money, because I have plenty of my own." James stood up and walked around his desk until he was standing directly in front of me. For the first time in weeks, he reached out and took my hands. "It means we get our second chance," he said softly. "Are you sure you want it? A relationship with a newly wealthy Spanish heiress who comes with an 8-year-old daughter and a complicated family history? I've never been more sure of anything in my life." This time, when he kissed me, it tasted like freedom. The legal proceedings took months to resolve, but the outcome was everything we'd hoped for. With Isabel Moreno's help, I successfully claimed the Herrera family property in Spain, 2 million euros worth of land that had been waiting 80 years for me to find it. The Swiss bank account, complete with accumulated interest and investment growth, yielded another 2.8 million euros. When the final paperwork was completed and the funds transferred to my American accounts, I sat in my Logan Square apartment staring at bank statements that showed a net worth of nearly $6 million. "Mama," Clara said, curled up next to me on the couch, "does this mean we're rich now?" "Yes, mija, we're rich now." "Does this mean you don't have to work anymore?" "No, baby, I still want to work, but now I get to choose what kind of work I do because I want to do it, not because I have to do it to survive." And that made all the difference. James and I went public with our relationship at a charity fundraiser that spring, the same type of event I'd once been too intimidated to attend as his guest. This time, I walked into the Palmer House ballroom wearing a designer dress I'd bought without checking the price tag, carrying myself with the confidence that comes from knowing your worth isn't dependent on anyone else's approval. When Monica Reynolds approached us at the silent auction, her expression was priceless. "Gloria," she said stiffly, "I heard about your change in circumstances." "Yes," I replied smoothly. "It's amazing what you can discover when you dig into family history. James has been so supportive of my genealogical research." "I'm sure he has." Her smile was sharp as ever, but there was grudging respect underneath the hostility. Money, I was learning, changed how people saw you, even people who dismissed you as inconsequential. "Actually," James interjected, slipping his arm around my waist, "Gloria's thinking of investing in real estate development. We might become business partners in addition to other partnerships." The implication was clear. We weren't just dating, we were equals, partners in every sense of the word. 6 months later, James proposed to me in the same office where I'd once cleaned his windows. Clara was there, bouncing with excitement as he got down on one knee and offered me a ring that was beautiful, but not ostentatious, a symbol of love, not a display of wealth. "Gloria Martinez," he said, "will you marry me? Will you let me be your partner in all the adventures still ahead of us?" I said yes, of course. But more importantly, I said yes as a woman who knew exactly what she was worth, with or without anyone else's fortune. We were married the following spring in a small ceremony at Our Lady of Sorrows Church, Father Miguel officiating. Clara was my maid of honor, wearing a dress that cost more than I used to make in a month, but looking exactly like the little girl I'd always known, curious, courageous, ready for whatever came next. James's son and daughter both attended the wedding, their relationships with their father gradually healing as he learned to connect with them as people rather than financial dependents. My extended family filled the church, cousins and aunts and neighbors who'd watched me struggle for years and were now witnessing my triumph. At the reception in the church hall, decorated with flowers I'd grown myself on our apartment balcony, I gave a toast that I'd been rehearsing for months. 5 years ago, I said, I was invisible. I cleaned windows and mopped floors and emptied trash cans, and the people I worked for looked through me like I was part of the furniture. I thought that was my value, what I could clean up, what messes I could fix for other people. I looked around the room at faces that had seen me at my lowest point and were now celebrating my highest. But I learned something important. Your worth isn't measured by how other people see you. It's not determined by how much money you have in the bank, or what job title is on your business cards, or whether anyone notices when you walk into a room. My voice grew stronger, carrying the conviction of someone who'd earned every word. Your worth comes from how you treat people when no one is watching. It comes from how you raise your children and care for your family and show kindness to strangers. It comes from getting up every morning and doing work that matters to you, whether that work is cleaning windows or managing millions or anything in between. I raised my glass, looking directly at Clara, who was beaming at me from the head table. So here's to all of us who've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or undervalued. You are not invisible. You matter. Your story matters. And sometimes, if you're very lucky or very persistent or both, the world finally figures that out too. The applause was thunderous, but what moved me most were the tears in the eyes of women who'd lived similar stories, the caterers who'd set up our reception, the church ladies who'd decorated the altar, the neighbors who'd watched Clara while I worked double shifts. They saw themselves in my journey, and for once they were able to celebrate not just my triumph, but the possibility of their own. As James and I danced our first dance as husband and wife, I thought about the woman I'd been 5 years earlier, scraping by in Pilsen, invisible to the people whose lives I cleaned up, afraid to dream beyond survival. That woman would never have believed this moment was possible. But that woman also possessed everything she needed for the journey: resilience, determination, love for her child, and a heart that refused to harden despite years of dismissal and disappointment. The money had changed my circumstances, but it hadn't changed who I was. I was still the same woman who noticed when someone needed kindness, who worked with integrity even when no one was watching, who believed that everyone deserved respect, regardless of their job title or bank balance. The difference was that now the world could see what had always been true. I was worthy of love, respect, and all the good things life had to offer. And Clara? My beautiful, brave daughter was growing up knowing that her mother was powerful, valuable, and capable of creating the life she wanted rather than just accepting what the world handed her. That knowledge, I realized, was worth more than all the Spanish gold my great-grandmother had hidden in her dress. It was a different kind of inheritance, the understanding that no matter where you start, you have the power to write your own ending. Today, James and I run a property development company together, focusing on affordable housing projects that provide safe, dignified homes for working families, like the one Clara and I used to be. We've created jobs for dozens of people, including several who started as cleaning staff and worked their way up to management positions. It's not charity. It's investment in the idea that everyone deserves a chance to build something better for themselves and their families. We still live in Chicago, in a beautiful house in Lincoln Park, with room for Clara's friends and family gatherings, and the occasional stray cat she insists on adopting. Clara, now 13, speaks 3 languages and dreams of becoming an international lawyer, specializing in property rights, inspired, she says, by her mother's fight to reclaim her family's heritage. Sometimes, when I'm working late in my home office and the house is quiet, I think about the women who are still invisible, cleaning offices after midnight, caring for other people's children while missing time with their own, doing essential work that goes unnoticed and undervalued. I think about them, and I remember them in very concrete ways. Our company provides health insurance and paid vacation to all employees, including part-time workers. We offer English classes and financial literacy programs. We created a scholarship fund for the children of service workers because everyone deserves access to education, regardless of their parents' immigration status or bank balance. But mostly, I remember what it felt like to be unseen, and I make sure to see others. Last week, I was leaving a restaurant in the Loop when I noticed the woman cleaning tables. Tired eyes, careful movements, the particular invisible quality that comes from being part of the furniture in other people's lives. She reminded me of myself 5 years ago. "Excuse me," I said, approaching her table. "I wanted to tell you that you do beautiful work. The attention to detail, the way you arrange those place settings, it's artistry." She looked up, startled. "Gracias, señora." "De nada. And I wanted you to know. If you ever decide you want to try something different, here's my card. We're always looking for people who understand what quality work looks like." I left my business card on her clean table and walked away, remembering what it felt like when someone saw potential in me instead of just someone to use. That's the real fortune I inherited. Not the Spanish gold or the Swiss bank accounts, but the knowledge that everyone deserves to be seen, valued, and given chances to grow. You asked me where I'm watching from and what time it is right now. I'm writing this from my home office, where I can see Clara doing homework at the kitchen table, while James makes dinner for all of us. It's 7:30 on a Tuesday evening, and this is what happiness looks like. Ordinary moments made extraordinary by the knowledge that we chose this life instead of having it chosen for us. Maybe you're someone who feels invisible right now. Maybe you're working for people who don't say thank you, cleaning up messes that aren't yours, wondering if anyone sees your worth. I want you to know, you are not invisible. Your story matters. Your dreams matter. And sometimes, the ending you're brave enough to write is even better than the one you dared to imagine. Have you ever felt overlooked or undervalued in your work or relationships? Have you found the strength to demand the respect you deserve, or are you still searching for it? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Every voice matters, and every experience adds to our collective understanding of what it means to fight for dignity and recognition. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps this message reach other people who need to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' ability to see it. To continue this journey of empowerment and hope, we've prepared a special podcast filled with stories of ordinary people creating extraordinary change in their lives. You can find it by clicking the link to your left. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey. Remember, you are not invisible. You are not alone, and your story is still being written. I'll see you in the next story, where we'll explore more tales of courage, transformation, and the power of knowing your worth.